So, friends, this podcast started some years ago as a personal hobby. It has become a little more than that. Over the years of this podcast, I have basically done all of the work of the podcast by myself: show notes, recording, editing. But I'm grateful that I have a new partnership with Luke Clayton and the team at increasecreative.co. They are helping me to produce each new episode of this podcast. So, this will, I hope, help us to publish on a more regular basis on Mondays, and will up the game on the quality of this podcast. Luke and his team does great work. I'd love to commend them to you. You can look them up again at increasecreative.co, or find more information on the show notes of this episode. Check them out. This is the On Preaching Podcast with H.B. Charles Jr., the podcast dedicated to helping you preach faithfully, clearly, and better. Good day, friends. Thanks for listening to the podcast. In this episode, I want to give some personal reflections on my recent visit to Israel. Over the past month, I got a chance to do some international travel. First of all, I had the great privilege of speaking at the Central Africa Baptist University in Kitwe, Zambia, for their annual Equip conference. Actually, it was the 20th anniversary of that conference. And I would encourage you to pray for that school. And if there is any way you can be a support to that good work going on there in Kitwe, Zambia, I would encourage you to do so. Specifically, let me mention that the men associated with that school has actually produced the African Statement on Prosperity Theology. So there are two major threats to the gospel on that continent. The first is traditional African religions, but the second and growing threat is prosperity theology. In Kitwe, they have electricity up to 4 hours a day. That's the land they live in, and yet there are prosperity preachers popping up everywhere promising health, wealth, and success. And these godly men have written a statement on the prosperity theology. That's available online. Just Google that. You'll find it. And I'd encourage you to read it and share it widely and pray for the success at that school. After I left there, I met up with Brian Sams and others, including members of our church, for a visit to Israel. And I'm grateful to have Brian on to talk about what that trip was like. For those of you who don't know who Brian Sams is, let me welcome him. Brian, thanks for joining. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey, HB, thanks for having me, man. It's so good to see you. And so I'm a pastor right here in Jacksonville, Florida, across the river at River City Baptist Church. Been here now on my 10th year, happily married to Angela for 23 years and have 5 amazing kids, Adriana, Brent, Blake, Ashley, and Braxton. And we are having the time of our lives serving the Lord. So thanks for having me on. What a great trip. Can't wait to talk about it.
Sure. Also, a couple of months ago, before we get to that, you published your first book. Tell us about that.
Yeah, what a privilege. The book is called Rescued, and it's the story of my family and how God put together our children, our whole family, particularly through 4 different adoptions. And what I try to do in the book is interweave biblical accounts, biblical principles into the story. I think it turned out to be a pretty good piece, really encouraging people to pray and believe for miracles and to trust God to fulfill really true religion in the church and in families through adoption and foster care. So thanks for letting me talk about that.
Sounds great. If they want to pick up a copy of the book, where can they find it?
Yes, sir. The easiest way is just Amazon. Just search Rescued Brian Sams. You'll find it there. You can reach out to me directly through email, and I can send you more of a bulk copies if people want them, 10 or more copies. But Amazon is the holding place.
Very cool.
Yes, sir.
This was my first trip to Israel. This was not your first trip. How many times have you been
So that was
Israel
my
over here.
second full trip of 10 days. So I've been there a total of 20, well, actually about 21 days. So that was my first trip leading a large group. But I've been there, so on those about 21 days total.
Sure. So I arrived mid-trip. So by the time I got there, the gang was moving on to Tiberias. But you stayed behind and make sure I got a chance to visit the old city of Jerusalem. Tell us about the opening part of that trip that you did not get a chance, that I didn't get a chance to participate in.
Yeah, so typically a trip starts in Jerusalem. Usually people's first like water in the face experience with Israel is to go to the Mount of Olives, which is where I took you first. And that's important because you get this panoramic view and really see the whole old city in one snapshot and are able to really point out and really orient people to the city. But what we do is we visit in and around the old city of Jerusalem. So you've got the usually first day is Mount of Olives, Palm Sunday Road, and then the Garden of Gethsemane, Eastern Gate, where Christ will return after he comes down the Mount of Olives. The city of David is another really interesting piece. We briefly touched that, but we walked all the way down through the city of David down to the pool of Siloam. Then a lot of people will go on what's called the traditional Via Dolorosa route, which takes people from basically the Pool of Bethesda area, Lions Gate, where Stephen was martyred, all the way up to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the traditional religious site of the crucifixion. Also, we were able to go to the actual garden tomb, where you have the whole experience. You see the tomb. We had a worship service there. Tremendous experience. So the goal is to really get people's minds and hearts around the realities of our faith, the historical, geographical setting in which these things occurred. And then on top of that, at each spot, we have a historical context tour guide. And then at each biblical spot, we have usually a Bible lesson or some sort of devotional that connects the biblical account too. So we got that in. The other thing that we got in before you got there was the Church of the Upper Room, which is one of my favorites. And they're pretty solid on that spot where it happened, just outside. Caiaphas's house was another spot we got to go to before you got there. So basically we did all of Jerusalem. You came in on the day we were leaving Jerusalem. So what I did was I tried to hit a highlight reel with you for about 5 hours. We walked about 15,000 steps.
Yeah. It was a blast.
Yeah,
so
man.
if I'll talk a little bit more about the trip, but let's just start at the beginning. What do you think is the value of a pastor visiting Israel?
Absolutely. I think there's at least three. I think you've got the rooting and reorienting your faith to historical realities. I don't need to see it. I don't need to see it to know it, but to go there and see biblical stories come together and really, I think, an awakening of awareness of certain geographical things. And just putting it into perspective. For instance, you can stand in one spot, you can see Caiaphas's house, you can see the brook Kidron, you can see the Garden of Gethsemane, you can turn around and see the upper room and the southern steps of the Temple Mount, and you see how, Jesus was betrayed. He ate the Last Supper, walked right down there. There's something about that. So I would say it's the first thing. The second thing is, I believe, just a reawakening of I don't know, a spiritual refreshment. Places where you're actually praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. We shared a prayer time right there by the oldest olive tree in the garden, which dates back to the time of Christ. Shiloh is another place that is just a meaningful spiritual moment. I think also for pastors to rest in a biblical setting like that, and to be able to have evenings to reflect immediately on the things that you saw. So it's kind of like a heart and a head reorientation. And I don't know. I know I can get it on video, and I know I can read it in a geography atlas or something like that. But I just don't know that a pastor can replace some of the visualization and tying some of those things together in a Holy Land experience.
That's great. Now, to tighten that, those are three great answers. But to tighten that up, is there a way that you think that kind of visit will aid a guy in his preaching?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think the ability to have firsthand knowledge. Okay, it's like this. If you were trying to get somebody into Jacksonville and you were trying to take them around and tour the city, you have real firsthand insight. You've been there, you've been around there. You know, when we look at the Bible, it's so easy to pass up, and they came to Bethel. Okay, well, we know Bethel's a mountain, and we there's certain things you can get from a book, but to actually be there, see it on a map, see how far it is from Jerusalem, see some of the distances, see some of the, like Capernaum. You got to go to Capernaum with me there on the Sea of Galilee. I mean, it's right on the Sea of Galilee. It was a fishing village, and just down the street, literally where Peter would have been cleaning his nets when Christ called him after the resurrection. I think to be able to visualize that and see some of that, my friend Kurt Skelly, who owns the company that we go with, he wrote his doctoral dissertation on Israel as a hermeneutic, meaning the geography, the history, the culture is its own hermeneutic in some ways. I mean, you think, we believe in historical, literal, grammatical interpretation of Scripture. And so nothing can be more tangible and real than actually stepping your foot there and visualizing it all. So I would say, you probably heard this before, but people have said when you go to Israel and have a tour study there, it's like going from black and white to HD. And I think that's probably a good way to describe it.
Sure. I got a question several times about the trip that I really I didn't think about there. The question I've gotten from people is, did you feel threatened or safe? And I was like, I don't think that really, except when we was on Dan and was hearing gunshots.
Yeah, so let me clarify that.
Yeah, but
a couple things on that. Number one,
people know, people are seeing Israel in the news.
Yeah,
and there has been a war for the past 2 years. So I mean, there's a prevalent question in people's mind
So number
about
one,
how safe it is to visit.
The rule of thumb is if planes are flying to Tel Aviv, it is actually safe. Okay. Now I was there. Of course, we were just there, but I was also there in March, 6 months after the October 7th attack.
Okay.
And I would feel much safer in Israel right now than certain streets in Jacksonville. Because what they have is a very prevalent, a very clear military presence. Mm-hmm. I mean, the possibility of something happening like while you're there is possible. I mean, I suppose. But the fact is, unlike America, they are so well ready and equipped for any kind of threat on their soil. It's just different, man. Mm-hmm. To your point, though, so Dan, just everybody's reference, if you've ever read in the Bible, from Dan to Beersheba, okay, that is a reference to the northernmost part and the southernmost part of Israel. So we were literally standing on the Lebanon border, kind of, up at Tel Dan. And we did, sure enough, hear a skirmish break out. Now, Benny, our tour guide, sent me a news thing from there. It was actually miles away. It was actually in Lebanon. Mm-hmm. And we were basically hearing an echo down through valleys. Now, that's not super encouraging for someone who lives in America and has never experienced anything like this at all. But I always say to people, over there, the thought of war, the possibility of war is always like, it's always possible.
Sure.
However, if Benny told me later, he said, when you hear that kind of stuff, I know it's unsettling for an American. He said, but really, Unless you see planes flying, like military planes flying, nothing is actually happening that even bothers those people. This is like, it's like a store getting robbed in the U.S.
Sure.
But so I would say we always, every time we take a tour, everybody understands up to the minute if there's going to be a problem, they can always get their money back. And when if they stop flying, everything, your money and your security is safe, but even your physical safety, I think is as safe there as anywhere in the world.
Good deal. So we started on the Mount of Olives. That was a very moving moment to get a chance to see over the old city of Jerusalem. I think just the reminder, as you mentioned earlier, that we don't actually practice blind faith. Our faith is, that is me, and I'm sorry. Our faith is rooted in historical facts. And to go down the which would have probably been the triumphal entry route in the Garden of Gethsemane. And all of this was so moving. And then we get ready to go into the temple area, and we go through security, and I'm all moved and encouraged and inspired, and you just suddenly turn around and say, HB, you don't have a Bible on you, do you? And I was like, no. Good. But I did have I had the Baptist statement, Baptist confession in my Bible, and they searched it, and they called guys over, and they were examining. There is a level of at this point we're walking into the distinction between the fact that you have Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. That this is ground zero for all three of these major religious leaders.
Yeah.
So
we were
for a person that
up
doesn't get a sense of what that is, just talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the Temple Mount that you're referring to, if you've ever seen a picture of Jerusalem and you see the gold dome, it's kind of the iconic photo of the old city of Jerusalem. All those pictures are actually taken from the Mount of Olives. But what the gold dome is that some people don't realize, it's actually an Islamic shrine called the Dome of the Rock. Right across the Temple Mount is, of course, a mosque. So it is Islamic controlled. But for those that might not be familiar with what the Temple Mount is, it's the actual mount where Solomon built the original temple, where Ezra rebuilt the temple after the Babylonian destruction, where so in Jesus' day, when he was there preaching in the temple, he was preaching right there on that spot. If you back the bus all the way up, it was marked off as the place where Abraham offered Isaac on the mount. And so it's this sacred place, so sacred. You remember somebody on our tour asked, well, why don't they just decide to worship somewhere else? And Jerusalem, the Jews say absolutely not, because this is where God told us to worship. So there's been this conflict over the years. So what you're referring to is what now currently it's changed hands over the years. Currently it's Islamic controlled. So you can't pray up there. You can't talk about the Bible up there. You can't even talk about the temple, or you're supposed to not be able to talk about the temple. So when you go up there, you're describing something so surreal. You go from this beautiful experience, then you go up into the heart of religion, the worst kind, this just where it's Islamic, and then we go down to the Church of Holy Sepulchre. You get the same feel at the Orthodox Church. What it says to me is that religion can mess up the gospel faster than the gospel can get to a town almost. Yeah. And you just see what man has done, but you also see, if you really step back and think about it, how sacred the Temple Mount really is. And there will be a temple rebuilt there, and that all will happen. But that's been the fuss, really. And some of it, from the outside, people that don't understand the land reallotments and stuff, that temple area has basically become the focal point because Israel won't give it up, and Islam thinks it rightly belongs to them. And so because Israel's so stubborn because of the commandment to worship there, it's just this constant conflict.
Yeah, I don't think you could get you can if you just watch American news, you don't get a sense of the fact that the issues there are not merely political or ethnic or military. They are rooted in theological matters.
Absolutely, 100%.
Sure. Yeah.
And just so we're clear, like that was a pretty tense moment for you because you had just got there, and you're thinking, I mean, I think he's going to get detained or at least get his little book taken. And they were asking you, is this a Bible? And you were like, no, it's a devotional. They had no idea what you were talking about.
Yeah.
They just kept saying, so this is not a Bible or a prayer book. And we were like, finally, we just said no, which is true. And so the 1689 confession made it to the Temple Mount, brother. It was there.
That's right. So I know this might be an unfair question for you. Because you were leading, so you had to pay attention to a lot of things. But what was the most moving part of the trip for you?
My favorite, there are two places, and they're equally meaningful for the same exact reason. One is the Garden of Gethsemane. I mean, I just don't know that there's words to describe what it means to kneel beside of an olive tree, whose roots the Lord knelt the night before he was crucified and prayed, not my will, but yours be done. There's just something really special about that. So we were able to go into the private prayer garden, and I was able to give a message there, and the whole group was able to go by a tree and offer their most special prayer requests to the Lord. That's number one. Number two, maybe a little bit more personal for me, but it has the same effect, is Shiloh, which we'll have to go next time. But in Shiloh, man, the archaeology is uncovering the footings of the ark of the tabernacle when it rested there. So basically Joshua brings the ark and the tabernacle into Israel after 40 years of wandering. At the end of the book of Joshua, God instructs them to set it up in Shiloh. So it's there in Shiloh. And then, of course, that's where, fast forward to Hannah, this is where Hannah's praying for Samuel. Now, I have firsthand experience with a wife that couldn't have children for a long time. And man, now that they've uncovered it, you can literally stand in the place where the Holy of Holies was. And there's something really surreal biblically about physically being where people could never go. And we know spiritually, because of Christ, we can go in there. We can pray anywhere at any time because of him. However, to be at the same place where God miraculously answered Hannah's prayer, and to be there where I've offered prayer requests and firsthand have seen God answer prayer there. Again, I know he can answer from anywhere. To answer your question more directly, it's those places where you have a biblical story and then you get to have a personal encounter, like a devotional, reflective moment. And Shiloh and the Garden of Gethsemane for me are just the top two.
Yeah, I think for me, just the beginning of the trip for me to be on the Mount of Olives and get kind of my first panoramic view, and to get the sense that my feet were on the ground where these historical events actually took place. My faith did not need that proof. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But to have that affirmation was just, I don't know how to describe that feeling. It was overwhelming. I would say then when we went to Tiberias, and I wake up that morning and outside of my window is the Sea of Galilee. And I just felt like I had a hard time processing that. We were that day scheduled to sail across the Sea of Galilee, and you wanted me to do Mark 4. Yeah. And I just told you, I'm not able. I just bailed out. And it was a remarkable feeling to be on that sea and to know Jesus calmed this sea. No. Jesus walked on these waters, on this sea.
Sir.
Yeah.
I had to step in. I had to step in and pinch hit for you, and I know everybody was incredibly disappointed they had to hear from me rather than you. But even standing at right, like on the Mount of Beatitudes, where we read the whole Sermon on the Mount, was that not a powerful
Yeah.
experience.
Absolutely.
You know, you're out there, you're visualizing it all. And Tiberias is such a calm place. It's Jesus' hometown. It's his home area. Yeah, man, I just think people do this and have done this historically for a reason. There is something emotional and spiritual and mental that will connect some dots for you. I commend everybody to go, and we can facilitate that for anybody that wants to go. So
Good deal. Yeah, I ditched you all the first day and decided I wasn't going to do any teaching, and I got bullied into teaching.
yes.
So
And
I did get a chance.
You got two great spots too. Maybe you can talk about
I got a chance
those.
I did the Great Confession in Caesarea Philippi, and one of the highest mountain points across the Sea of Galilee. I got a chance to do "You Are the Light of the World, a city set on a hill cannot be hidden." So those were great.
100%.
Those were wonderful opportunities. Anything that you felt like is just that was, I know we talked about what was inspiring to you. What was troubling to see when you visit there?
Boy, I tell you, there's the one thing that stands out to me more than anything, and you experienced this firsthand because I took you there, and I told you before we even got there, I was like, I'm telling you, brother, you're not going to like this. Some people may disagree with me here, and that's fine, but I do not like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, man. It is a weird place. So for people that aren't familiar, there's two possible locations of the crucifixion and the tomb. There's one that is now a Greek Orthodox church. It's changed hands over the years. It was a temple to Jupiter back in AD 300 or something, but now currently it's a Greek Orthodox church, but it's got idols everywhere. It's just like an idol shop, man. You know, there's one place where you saw the like Mount Calvary supposedly is behind glass, and people bend down in there and touch it and all this kind of crazy stuff. And then there's this
covered with shrines on top of it as well.
Oh, absolutely. You feel like you're in like some kind of weird Catholic I don't know what it is. It's just weird. And then, of course, the tomb is this big, giant shrine thing that it's just, it just doesn't, I don't feel comfortable there.
Sure.
Whether it's a spot or not, I don't know. But if you go just a few 100 yards north of there, and you go to the garden tomb that was uncovered in the 1800s just off the Damascus Road, you get all the feels of it. I mean, you get, whether it's true or not, a lot of intellectual archaeologists would say that the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is the place. But I say the overall troubling thing to me is just
as you noted, there is you and Benny, I think, both mentioned that over the centuries, when they found a historical site, they built a church there. So,
yeah, and that's probably the main argument. The main argument for the Church of Holy Sepulchre is the continuity of religious shrines, basically. I mean, you saw at Capernaum, good night, they found Peter's house and they built a church over top of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a spaceship.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the other thing. But it doesn't mean that there's new things being found. Because when I took you to the city of David, remember they had found the Aaronic blessing inside of a tomb, which was the oldest piece of scripture in the history of the world.
Yeah.
So it's extraordinary. So I guess what I'm saying is archaeology is so new to Israel and they're uncovering things all the time. I just can't let that be the final word. The truth is we don't know. But when you go to the actual garden tomb, the one where you can see Golgotha, where you can actually walk in the tomb, I don't know, man. There's just something super, super over spectacular about that. Unfortunately, I think when we had our day, I think it was Sunday. It was closed, so I couldn't take you there. So that's why that's one reason why you absolutely have to come back. Because that is probably for the Christian. I mean, that's Super Bowl Sunday right there. I mean, the rest, the resurrection and being able to visualize, and they point out, man, the garden, the wine press, it's right there by this particular mountain. It was a major highway. There's a lot of reasons that they sell it, but boy, that's a real special place, man. Real special place.
Well, praise God. I'm glad for the invitation, and it was a joy to be with you. And I appreciate you coming on, taking time to talk to us a little bit about the trip. You have spoken the past couple of years at our Cutting It Straight conference, and you'll be speaking this year.
Yes, sir.
Maybe in a breakout. Maybe you'll talk to us in a breakout about why it would be valuable.
I would love to
visit the
do
Holy-
that. I would love
Yeah.
to do that. I tell you what we need to do. We need to do a cut it straight Israel trip. I'll lead the whole thing. All you have to do is teach at the sites, and we'll have a preaching party in Israel, man. We can make it happen.
That sounds like a blast. One more thing, and we'll quit. But you have a new podcast that
Yes,
you
sir.
started. Would you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I had been for a number of years doing Church Advance, and you were gracious enough to come and speak at a few of the meetings that I had. Church Advance had a shelf life. There was a message I was trying to get across to people that were looking for kind of an identity after maybe having some challenges in a former connection. So I said a lot of things about how I transitioned from, in Bible translations and just my affiliations, frankly, my relationships with you and others. That was a whole different world for me.
Sure.
And I felt like speaking to that, gave it a voice, helped a lot of people. But as time has went on, I've had to ask myself the question, what am I really passionate about? I think it's important that you assess what's going on right now. What should you be focusing on right now? And I kept coming back to preaching, man. I just keep coming back to my love for preaching. It's a love God gave me for preaching right after I got saved, man. I was called to preach. I immediately started preaching. I've always loved it. And for the last 16 years, I've spent every semester teaching homiletics on a master's and undergraduate level. So what I did is I decided to start Pulpit Advance, using the advanced term and the podcast, as well as a coaching and cohorts and classes. And it's just me taking all my preaching stuff over the years and just dumping it into one place. And so you can check it out at pulpitadvance.com. It's a pretty cool situation, a very unique opportunity I have to have been a pastor, but also a homiletics professor for all these years. And I'm basically, if I could summarize it in one sentence, I'm trying to help people preach better.
Amen. I'm all for that.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Well,
sir.
thank you, brother, for joining us. And thank you all for watching and or listening to the On Preaching podcast. For more information, you can go to hbcharlesjr.com. You can contact us there. You can find resources and information that may be a help to you. You can also find me on social media, X, Instagram, Facebook. My handle is HB Charles Jr. in all of those spaces. And listen, buddy, if you're listening, you might as well subscribe to the On Preaching podcast and whatever platform you use to listen to podcasts. And if you would like, rate, or comment on the podcast, it'll help others find this material, and I will consider it a personal favor. Thanks in advance. I appreciate you listening, and I hope you'll join us again for the next episode of the On Preaching podcast. Until then, friends, all the best. You've been listening to the On Preaching podcast. For more information or resources, or to contact me, go to www.hbcharlesjr.com.